Well, hello there and happy holidays, everyone. Welcome to episode 319 of the Canadian Football Countdown, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network and the Alternative Football Network. We're back for one final time here in the year 2025 to count down. It's the Canadian Football Countdown. We surprisingly don't do countdowns that often. We do them here and there throughout the off season, but we figured why not end off the year 2025 with a true countdown. So we're here tonight, Ryan and Trey, with you this time around to count down our top 10 CFL stories of 2025. What better way to put a bow on the season? Of course, we've already done our season wrap up. So a lot of these stories will probably be repeats of what we first discussed briefly at the end of the 2025 season. We've done some deep dives on a couple of teams as well to dive deeper into these topics, but we've got rankings for you. We've got rankings of our top 10 news stories of the year. Trey, Adam, and I all put in our votes. Adam, unfortunately, wasn't feeling well, could not be here tonight to discuss them, but we came out with our collective top 10 rankings, and we've got some honorable mentions as well. And it's been a bit since we've seen you here, so happy to have you back, Trey, to join me to talk about them all tonight. How are you doing?
Doing good, Ryan. Just decompression time at the end of the season. As you know, sure. Christmas with kids is just headache and a half. And now we're here and we're gonna end the season up with a countdown. Seems like we start the season with our countdowns, our top 5, I guess, position players, and now we're gonna end the year off with our top 10. And interesting list that we've accumulated. Some things that some interesting things to talk about, right? How about you, man? How was your family, Christmas with the family?
Busy as always. It's a busy time of year for myself with the kids and everything as well. So definitely enjoyed the family time. It was nice to get a break from everything, spend some time with the family, and happy to dive back into the post-holiday activities, including getting back to the podcast because we did take the last week off. I believe the last episode out, if you missed it, was Adam and I going over the CFL schedule and talking about everything for the 2026 schedule. So go back, check that one out. If you missed that, we also, throughout the offseason thus far, have been working on our 2025 CFL season deep dive series. I think recorded 4 different teams deep dives so far. You can check that back out in the podcast feeds as well. And hoping to pick that up again this next week heading into January and get all remaining 5 of those done before free agency hits, which is like a month away at this point in time. So lots of content to come here on the Canadian Football Countdown throughout the off season. Of course, we're live tonight. We'll take your comments and questions as we go through our top 10 stories of the year here as well. And let us know in the live chat your top stories of the year. And that's thanks to our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. Learn more at gametimetv.ca or facebook.com/gametimetvmb. Let's do the land acknowledgement. We want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. Also, check out our Discord community if you want to chat with us in between episodes. Lots of fun going on in there on the regular. I saw that the CFC Discord NFL Fantasy League just wrapped up. Trey was hosting that one, and who was our champion in that one? I believe it was Mike. Mike ended up taking the top prize in that league.
I was gonna say, do you want me to say it? He rode with a lot of Cowboys, and somehow it ended up working out for him. And he won. I just got out of being the toilet bowl loser or whatever, so I finished 7th. I can't remember where Adam was.
Adam and I did.
Oh, right, yeah, you guys weren't in it. Right? You guys weren't in it, so that was it for the pod. But right.
But good fun with NFL fantasy wrapping up. In the one league I did play in this year, I ended up losing the first round of the playoffs. Not going to lie, kind of like that. So I don't have to go through the stress on Christmas Day of caring about my fantasy team because final week of the season always ends up going into the Christmas holidays. But another year of NFL fantasy in the books, CFL fantasy in the books. So a fantasy football dry spell for the next couple of months. But leaves us a lot of fun off-season content to talk about here and on the Discord as well. Links in the episode description. It's free to join us over there. before we dive into our topics, I've actually got a little bit of a CFC show and tell for y'all. As a Christmas gift this year from my wonderful wife, I believe it's the first ever Canadian Football Countdown hat in existence.
Wow.
You and Adam are the hat guys on the podcast, but I think I found one that I'm ready to rock here on the show right now.
I'm jealous. I love it.
Yeah, it's to my knowledge the first one in existence, and if you want more in existence, if there's enough people that actually want these, that I would put in the effort to build a merch store, let me know and I'll put in the effort to build a merch store. But at least I've got one. So one exists out. I'll put it up for auction for the highest bidder. No.
Yeah. Signed by the T, maybe CFL fans cure cancer next year or something.
Yeah, there we go. No. Yeah. Had to show it off on the first show back after the holidays. Yeah. Love the hat.
Love it.
And let's dive in. Let's get into our top 10 stories of 2025. You put in your 10 votes. I put in mine. Adam put in his. There was a lot of overlap, a couple of different ones in between them. Gave it a point system, and here's what we came up with, our 10 storylines to talk about here. And we're going to start from the bottom up. We'll start at number 10 and go up to number 1. And what better way for two folks here in Winnipeg to kick this off than talking about our, air quotes, beloved, I guess, Winnipeg Blue Bombers missing the Grey Cup for the first time in 6 years. You, me, and Adam all had that on our list. In different variations, I would say. You talked about the dynasty failure of the team, the collapse. I was more so talking about the offensive ineptitude. What is the major storyline here to talk about when it comes to the Bombers this season?
You want me to pick one thing? I think it's a combination of everything. Like you said, the offense was horrible. Which led to then the dynasty and the dynasty failure and the first time to not be in the Grey Cup in 6 years. Yeah, that's even in a 9-team league. That's a weird thing to say. I think it's everything, and just to show that, it's not necessarily 2025. I mean, it happened 2025, but to show that I guess they're trying to correct the coaching.
But not doing a very good job of it, I'll say.
And I was talking about this with somebody too, where I feel bad for Hogan because, to be publicly demoted from a job might not be a good thing. But I also could feel that maybe a conversation behind closed doors last year, because I felt maybe they couldn't find someone after Pierce left. So they're like, hey, you get the promotion for a year. Worst case, you go back to running back coach next year. Best case, you hit a grand slam and you get the job. That's probably what it was, right? And kind of the understanding. So from that point, seems like Claros is happy with Condell. But yeah, the Bombers, man, just old everywhere, gaping holes everywhere. Just, again, in a 9-team league, you're going to have probably a 10-year cycle where a team's not, or 5 to 10-year cycle where teams are not going to be good. And this was the Bombers' year, and it was just weird because I don't want to say everybody, but majority called them the flagship team of the league and franchise league over the last few years. And it's, it's weird when the Patriots don't make the playoffs or the Yankees don't make the playoffs. And last 5 years, the Bombers, and I think that's where it's number 10, right? Or they made the playoffs, but just crossover really didn't make the playoffs.
Well, I wouldn't have surprised me if they fought their way back to it because of the way they fought back into that game against Montreal. And if they got through that, could they have gotten through Hamilton? Potentially, yeah, I think they could have based on the most recent game those teams played. And then we're right back there talking about this team going to the Grey Cup against the Riders in Winnipeg and what a spectacle that would be. But we kind of got the preview of this storyline early last year when the team started 0-4, 2-6 or something like that. And then suddenly they turned it around second half of the season. They found their way back to the Grey Cup. And we said all along this team was going to push for hosting the Grey Cup at home in 2025. Aging vets are going to keep the core together and try to keep running it back for one more shot at this. And I think that's detrimental to the team in some capacity to do so. And we saw them struggle this year. And I think a lot of it was like the ineptitude of the offense, the inability to make halftime adjustments for the team. I thought the defense actually statistically was one of the best defenses in the CFL large part of the season. Sergio Castillo can hit his long field goals. Trey Vavel wasn't he the special teams player of the year, or at least a nominee for it. So it really comes down to the offensive play calling of Jason Hogan in his first year as offensive coordinator was not great. The team failed to make second half adjustments. They'd come out of the gate flying early in the game often, and then at halftime or second half, they could barely move the ball down the field. And we saw Zach Claros struggle. We saw him get hit over and over again, get injured a couple of times. Chris Strevler came in, somehow won a game by completing only 3 passes, which is still incredible to me. That could have been a storyline in itself to make the list. And just Brady Oliveira not getting the ball when they needed to give him the ball the most. And you tied it into exactly where I was going to go as well, of everybody saying after the season they need to move on from Jason Hogan. They need to look at other options. Well, the other option happened to be the other offensive coordinator who also doesn't know how to use his running backs effectively in the run game, which is Tommy Condell, who has proven time and time again in his time in Hamilton and his time in Ottawa to not be effective at leveraging the run game. And I know he's got history with Zach Collaros, but based on the way Collaros has played the last couple of years, I don't really want him being the one to decide who the offensive coordinator should be for this team. So I don't think things have gotten better. I think this could be the start of a run here for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers of, falling a little bit from grace, so to say. But then again, we said that about the Stampeders as well. And they had that 1 or 2 seasons at the bottom, and then they look pretty strong again this year. So never say never, I guess, is the lesson I would say here. But this certainly isn't the force it's been for the last 5 years, and it feels like it's the beginning of the end of the era for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I don't want to spend too much time on this topic, but to add one thing, Jake Thomas as D-line coach, I'm actually kind of excited about.
I love that.
I do think that could be a good one there because he's probably been more of a player coach for the last few years anyway. He always looked a little bit like a step behind, big guy. And, I don't know if they keep Jefferson or not, but, that kind of keeping him in that room, I think could be good for that D-line. And with a D-line that's had Jefferson and some young guys that have stepped up, that could be the focal point of that defense. That kind of was their saving grace at times, right? So especially if you could get Vavel back, you get some of those other key parts back. They got they re-signed the one middle linebacker, I thought, right? They re-signed some guys. I'm blanking right now on names. It's been a long December. But, I think that could be the one thing where we're like, maybe if the Bombers defense keeps the opposing team under 15 points, God, Collaros hopefully could put up 16. But,
Thomas has been with the team for 12, 13 years. It's a feel-good story to see a guy like that move into a coaching role for the team as well. I love to see that.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I mean. I think that it keeps the spirit of the D-line a little bit there too, right? So
for sure. All right, let's move on to story number 9. Let's talk a little bit about the Edmonton Elks. I don't think this one made your top 10 list, but maybe it was in the honorable mentions. Adam and I had kind of similar storylines here, which is why does it keep delay? It keeps removing the ticker after 10 seconds. Let me fix that here. Let's put it up on the board. There we go. Which is the Edmonton Elks. They spent big in free agency again this year, made huge splashes on the defense, made some big additions on the offensive line. They made a trade for Cody Fajardo, brought him in. They handed the reins to Trey Ford after giving him a 3-year contract to start the year after he came in late in the season the last couple of years. And, well, once again, it's the same old for the Edmonton Elks. Too little, too late once again. This year, Trey Ford gets the reins early in the season. They don't end up winning football games. He struggles, and suddenly week 8, week 9, they put Cody Fajardo in after trading for him in the offseason. And Fajardo starts racking up a couple of wins, and the Elks have hope, and everybody's high on them turning things around. But a couple of key losses late in the season mixed with the early season woes, and this team misses the playoffs once again in the West Division. This one was high on my list, or kind of middle to high on my list, was the Trey Ford Cody Fajardo thing, and that is because we all said it coming into the season of finally they're giving Trey Ford the chance. He's been the most exciting part of this franchise for the last 3 years, so to say, 2 or 3 years. coming in late in the season, playing magical football, making magic happen with his legs, those big plays where you think he's trapped and then suddenly he's escaping for a 30-yard run. This is what's going to take Edmonton finally that next step to the next level. But the other side of it we were often debating is how long is the leash until Fajardo gets into the game? And it took less than half of the season to Cody Fajardo is the starter, and Cody Fajardo re-signs with the Elks at the end of this season as well to be their starter for 2026. And no official news yet on Trey Ford, but some comments from GM Ed Hervey basically saying that I think it's best for both sides if Ford moves on somewhere else. So what a change it's been in 1 year to go from this guy's the guy of the future to we're going to stick with the wily veteran, Cody Fajardo.
Yeah, and interesting when you convinced his twin brother to come play with them, and now you're kicking him out the door a year later, which I think he signed a 2-year deal, so he's stuck there for another year at least. So, yeah, very interesting. This one didn't make my top 10, but I guess it could have. And not because of the lack of its importance. It just, again, I'm just sick of the whole what's going on with Trey Ford, and everything in Edmonton where I don't know. I go back and forth on him every week. Is it just that he's not that good, or is it just a bad situation? Like again, watch him go to Winnipeg and then win great MOP. You know what I mean? Or watch, and I'm not saying Winnipeg. Watch him go to any other team and watch him go off, or watch him go to maybe a team that's not doing so good on the other side either, and then he goes 0-16 and or 0-18 and just terrible season, and Edmonton's like, oh, we dodged that bullet, right? I could see both possibilities going into 2026, and I just kind of stick to talk. I mean, I don't know if it's just the allure of the Canadian quarterback, I think, that's got him, and not everyone's going to be Tom Brady, and not everyone's going to be Nathan Rourke, right? Like, not every Canadian quarterback's going to come in to be Nathan Rourke. They got the kid, the Green Bay, it's not Green Bay anymore, but the kid the Bombers have in the NFL. He might not be the next Nathan Rourke either, right? These guys are not like it. So from the Elks, I think that they did some big steps forward, though, as a team. They're not the team that can't win at home anymore. And Fajardo, again, I was surprised. I get why, but I was a little surprised he lost his job in Montreal, too, because I don't think he didn't lose it. Alexander won it. I think that's, like, if you want to look at it that way a little bit. So I think he still has some good playing years in him. He's not looking like Caleros out there. So, I mean, if that's where Edmonton wants to go, I think that's the right choice.
Well, if Fajardo doesn't get injured in 2024, he goes on to win MOP and is probably the starter in 2025 for Montreal once again, right? Like he lit up the start of that season, just like you were saying, and then he got injured. Alexander looked good in relief, and that's why they moved on to Davis Alexander, and they were willing to part ways with Fajardo, who went over to Edmonton, thought it would be a better fit for him, and yeah, it seems like it's actually a great fit. Like, the team loves him. He loves the team. He looked pretty solid, I think, down the stretch. I thought Trey Ford got a raw deal the last couple of years when he didn't really get the chance to play, when he was clearly, the exciting offensive weapon that could be grown into that next starter for the team. Then I thought he got a little bit of a raw deal this year with the wide receiver talent that the Elks have on paper. I think is probably bottom tier, maybe in the CFL if you look at it on paper, right? Like, they had a couple of guys, like, you had Keon Julian Grant, you had Stephen Dunbar, you had Curly Gittins Jr., like, those guys are making plays, but a lot of names that aren't known to us, like Arkell Smith and Benjamin Victor were two of the starting 5 receivers for this team that we didn't really know coming into the year, and they didn't really pop off. Like, we know their names now, but we don't know them as stars quite yet. And so they didn't have a whole lot of offensive weapons to throw to. Justin Rankin was essentially the top receiver on the team, you could argue, at times throughout the year. But Fajardo made that work because he is a much more accurate passer. That set of receivers does not work for grooming a quarterback who is not a solid passer yet, is more known for his legs. Kind of wasn't left with a lot of options there. So Fajardo seems like a better fit. I hope they go out and spend time or spend some money in free agency to give him some more offensive weapons this time around. But I think that sets the Elks up for an interesting 2026. I don't know if I'm willing to bank on, I'm not throwing my hat in their corner necessarily because I'm worried they're going to let me down again at this point in time. But I think Fajardo is somebody who can stabilize that team a little bit. And I think that led to, Adam was talking about when he submitted his rankings, the big spending in free agency didn't really do anything. That defense in the second half of the season was one of the better defenses, I would say a top-tier defense in the CFL. It just took the time to gel, which is always going to happen when you spend a lot on free agency. The teams that spend the most hardly hit the ground running in the first half of the season, and by the time they got a chance, the defense locked in. Fajardo protected the ball. That helped the defense out. So, again, a promising second half of the season, and that might want to give you hope if you're an Edmonton Elks fan. But same old as the result. We have not seen this team in the playoffs in a number of years now, and onwards and upwards for this team heading into 2026.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, one thing first thing that came to my head when we started talking about the receiving core before you said names was Gittins Jr., where he's been a staple of my fantasy team, and he just disappeared since he left Toronto. And, other guys, have just kind of go off one week and they're kind of not there the next week. And it's wild. And yeah, you said spend money. It's weird. The first guy that came to my mind, Dalton Schoen, I honestly think could fit into that offense, and the Bombers might not bank on him another year because of his injury trouble. And a guy who might be a cheaper option again because of injury problems. There's some other guys, it's like anything. And then they already have a good running back or two. They have some decent. See, again, Gittins and those other guys, I think, are like the 2, 3, 4 guys. I think they just need that number one receiver a little bit. And again, a guy like Schoen, if he's healthy, could be great. I'm sure there's other guys I'm blanking on right now.
Well, the interesting thing is they had those guys, right? They had Kenny Waller, they had Eugene Lewis. They spent big on both of those, but wasted them on the years when they were, not good as a whole as a team and unsure at the quarterback position. So this year they thought they were going with franchise quarterback and then didn't give them the receivers. So Edmonton's got to lock in here and solidify the options for Cody Fajardo, who seems to be the starter going into 2026. Let's move on to storyline number 8 here. This one takes place after the season finishes, but I think it plays in hand with a lot of storylines throughout the year for both the Toronto Argonauts and the Ottawa Red Blacks, and that is Argos head coach Ryan Dinwiddie departs Toronto for a huge opportunity in Ottawa. I believe he's the coach. I believe he's the GM. He might even also be the VP of football operations, if I'm not mistaken, in Ottawa, or some higher up role. Let me confirm that. I thought he was a triple threat. Maybe he's just the head coach, general manager. I guess Sean Burke is Sean Burke is vice president of football operations. My apologies. But Dinwiddie leaves the Argos after a disastrous season, and Ottawa fires Bob Dice after a disastrous season of their own, and now Dinwiddie comes in to play double duty. Your thoughts on this move?
Absolutely shocked Dinwiddie left Toronto, especially in the fashion he did. They're only 1 year removed from a Grey Cup win, and I know football is probably the worst out of all pro sports for coaches getting fired or moving on. If you want to hear about coaches leaving and moving on, just watch college football in the States, right? There's guys in the playoffs leaving to other teams. So, it could get definitely crazier than what Dinwiddie did. But for CFL, could he even have left if it wasn't for the GM attachment? Because you can only leave for upgrade, I guess. So a couple of questions here that come to my mind. What the hell's going on in Toronto, right? It's not a good look. And again, different personalities, different things. Winnipeg had a bad season, and there was talks about Osh going to Toronto, but he didn't. You know what I mean? So, it takes more than a bad year, I think, to leave anything again, unless it was the GM thing, and I guess Toronto wasn't going to offer O'Shea the GM with pinball there, right? So,
right.
But it's just, what the hell's going on in Toronto? Is kind of my question, because it also seemed hard for them to get a coach. Who did they end up going with? I can't remember.
Quarterback coach Mike Miller, I think, ended up, or offensive coordinator Mike Miller, I believe,
right,
got promoted.
right. But then they wasn't there some shenanigans talks about talking to Corey Mace tampering.
They tried to get him back.
Yeah, you know what I mean. What's going on in Toronto? And again, you just got your coach who won a Grey Cup a year ago to leave. You think you're going to get the guy who just won one to come here? You know, and I had a tough time thinking Osh was going to go there. You know, 5 Grey Cup appearances in 6 years. It just had a tough time. It didn't fit his personality. So I'm just like, what's going on there? Is it just MLSC? I have a tough time believing pinball's hard to work for, but maybe he is. Is he just too hands-on? Is MLSC the problem? Like this is number 8, but I wanted it to be the whole thing underneath, like what's going on in Toronto. Because again, what's going on with Kelly, which we'll talk about a little bit later, I believe. Yeah, we'll believe. So I don't want to get too into that. But like, you know, and what are they going to do with? Is it going to be Arbuckle? Is it Kelly? Is it something else? Are they going to get, you know? I think they just released, but dropped Shador Sanders' negotiation because he's actually playing good. So, you know, I don't really think they have any other options. So, you know, and coming into now a season, you know, ahead, 3 games on the road extra, you know, and long time away. And, you know, the Argos with the World Cup, they're even if they were playing there, they're not going to be the focus in the city for the summer when you got the Blue Jays, who I'm assuming are going to be just as good, if not better. You got the World Cup going on. I mean, the Leafs aren't making the playoffs by the looks of it, but, you know, it's hard to be center in Toronto. And when your coach, who won the freaking Grey Cup last year, has one bad year, and it wasn't necessarily, like, horrific. Like, they had their moments. Like, you know, that wasn't – they're not 0-18. I just think that there's something else going on there, man. Am I seeing in the crystal ball too much, or –
No, this got a couple of votes in our rankings in general, as well as just the downfall of the Toronto Argonauts as a whole this year. Because again, you're right, they won the Grey Cup last year. The year before that, wasn't it, when they went 15-3, something like that, dominated the regular season. Yeah, they flopped in the playoffs there, but this year, on paper, at times, Toronto seemed like they had all of the pieces they need to get it done. They just lacked the killer instinct to win games. You had that one game where Mario Alford returns the late kick to get it done. You had 3 games that the Argos actually won of the 5 games they won this year were last-second miracle wins that the team pulled out in a couple of weeks back to back to back, like that Deshaun Brissett huge catch that led to the game-winning field goal against Hamilton later in the season. You had a number of other games where you had one against Montreal. You're up 18 going in the second half, and then you let Davis Alexander come back and rally to keep the perfect streak alive. We'll talk more about Alexander probably tonight yet as well. And so the Argos, it just seemed like frustration land for them too. And I think Dinwiddie was just a little frustrated with everything, because how many times did he have post-game press conferences where he was going off on his team as well? I mean, wasn't it like 2 or 3 weeks into the year when he did a post-game presser and called out one of his offensive linemen for coming to camp out of shape and sending him home, or saying if guys don't perform, they're going to get sent home or something like that, and then calling out the media and stuff like that as well. Dinwiddie seemed like, he was a little agitated with the situation in Toronto, and I think it's a combination of all of the things you mentioned, probably the team not executing the way they should have this year, the discipline of the team, the ownership situation, maybe that plays into it. I do think that the schedule this upcoming year, Adam and I talked about it on our last schedule episode, I think that's going to deter free agents. I think that deterred some coaches, et cetera. Who wants to spend the first 3 months of the year on the road? I wouldn't. And so Dinwiddie, I think he sees that opportunity in Ottawa now that that's vacated by Bob Dice being let go. He sees that opportunity to fill that, promotion for one, get that GM role as well. Gets to put his stamp on the team, build the team the way he wants it. He gets to say on the offense there. And I think Ottawa is a team that has some solid pieces as well, where if they can get the right coaching staff in place, that team can produce, right? Like Drew Brown has been touted as an up-and-comer in the CFL if he can stay healthy. They had one of the most talented wide receiver cores in the CFL this year, but didn't use them to the maximum with Tommy Condell, the aforementioned Condell, at offensive coordinator. Now Dinwiddie's going to be calling his own plays. He's going to be bringing in his own players, etc. I'm excited for the future of the Ottawa Redblacks this season with Dinwiddie at the helm, because I think, as much as we joke about the short time he lived as a player in the CFL, and I'll talk about his performance in the 2007 Grey Cup, as a coach, he's been really, really good. He has produced some of the best offenses in the CFL over the last couple of years. He, made it work with Kyle Bethel-Thompson. He made it work with Chad Kelly, turned him into a top quarterback in the CFL. We're going to talk about it right away as well. He made it work with Dick Arbuckle this season, got the most out of him. So whether it's Drew Brown, whether it's Dustin Crum, whoever the quarterback is in Ottawa, kind of excited to see what Dinwiddie can do with them.
No, 100%. And we've seen in recent years what a coach can do. Corey Mace goes to Saskatchewan, and that team really has a different fire. O'Shea to Winnipeg, and Dinwiddie, when he first came to Toronto, like how crazy that kind of turnaround or culture seemed to be, at least on the field. And, you mentioned him calling out players. Well, that might just buckle down to those are players he didn't want. And now he has this GM title, and he can make the decisions where he's thinking, well, why the hell are we signing a guy who's out of shape, and all that, and something where Pinball or whoever makes those decisions up there, now he's got it. So I don't know. I think Ottawa has had a lot of upside over the last few years, and maybe Dinwiddie's just the difference change what that can be, and Toronto might have the couple year building now, they can, because they could be, like you said, free agents might jump ship, if you have why would you sign there with 3 games on the road, and again in a city where you're some players like that. Some players like playing in the city where you are the main focus, which would be Regina, Winnipeg, Hamilton, more kind of cities. They don't want to be in a city where you're behind 4, 5, 6 teams and now a World Cup. Like it could just be that. And 3 games on the road, and you're using, like, I'm assuming when they come to Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, that they're using the visitor locker room. I'm assuming they're still at hotels, and again, I don't go too much on the home field sometimes, because most of these guys are living out of a suitcase anyway, even in their home city. But you can't even get a condo, you can't get your Airbnb that you kind of are more comfortable with. They're staying at the Holiday Inn Airport here in Winnipeg. Yeah. It's, or whatever they got, Super 8 in Regina. Like, have fun with that. It's so it's not high dime living in TO. So I think Dinwiddie sensed, captain's supposed to go down with his ship, but I think he sensed this Titanic was going. And what was that movie? Like a guy in the Titanic that put the wig on and pretended to be a woman, right? That's Dinwiddie getting the hell off the Titanic right now, going to Ottawa.
Well put. And for Ottawa, Bob Dice had to go. I hate to say it because he seems like a great guy, but over the years, I think coaching has held this team back based on who they've had on paper. So you could have not asked for a better, I think, option among the options available than to bring in Ryan Dinwiddie and give him that dual role. So exciting times ahead for the Red Blacks. Bleak times ahead, potentially, we feel right now for the Toronto Argonauts. We're going to stick with the Argos for story number 7, and we teased it a little already. That's Chad Kelly missing the entire 2025 season. Nick Arbuckle gets the reins as a starter coming off of that Grey Cup victory where he won Grey Cup MVP the year before when he filled in after Kelly did get injured. They give him the starting role coming into the year because Kelly's expected to be out kind of 9 weeks, something like that, a couple of months, and then it lingers on and on. It's a toe issue. Kelly posts that he's coming back the following weekend, then he doesn't come back. They say he's at 90%. Suddenly he's back home in Buffalo with his family, and then he's not really around the team, then he is. And Dinwiddie, I think at some point midway through the season said, no, when Kelly comes back, he's our starter. He's the number 1 guy, regardless of how Arbuckle's playing. Then we never see Chad Kelly again for the rest of 2025. So what the heck is going on there?
Yeah, it makes me feel like there's more off-field stuff, or again, maybe it's an argument between Dinwiddie and higher ups. Dinwiddie said he's our guy, and for some reason the higher ups are keeping him back, or he just can't get medic. I don't know. I lean towards the off-field stuff, even though we haven't heard anything, but maybe like it's nothing as bad as what's been previously stated, but just bad enough for are just not. It's either that or not medically cleared, or again, Dinwiddie wanted him to start, and for some reason the higher up said no, it's Arbuckle, and Dinwiddie's hands were tied. So I could see that one. Does that mean Kelly could? I mean, Toronto already has like 3, Crum and
Ottawa has Drew Brown. I think Crum is a free agent. Matt Schultz just retired yesterday.
Right. I don't know. Does that open up a spot to Kelly to go there with?
So I think from what I've read that new head coach in Toronto, Mike Miller, has said he has a great relationship with Chad Kelly. And so it seems like it's on track for Kelly to be, if he is healthy, the starter going into 2026.
I mean, but that's what Dinwiddie said.
Right.
So, yeah. So I mean, it's I don't know. Unless again, MLS sees like we can't afford any more PR nightmares. We can't.
But then they keep creating their own PR nightmare.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So I don't know. That one, I did not have Chad Kelly not playing a single down on my bingo card.
No, like if we revisit in our fantasy league, you traded for him early in the season. You sent Adam Nathan Rourke, and it was Rourke and Ouellette for Oliveira and Chad Kelly, which at the time I said, decent deal. Rourke had some injury concerns. Chad Kelly seemed like he was going to be back after the bye in a couple of weeks. And if he returned to form, then sure, like it could have worked out. Little did we know that was going to end up being the case. But Nick Arbuckle, who saw this kind of season coming from him? Like you picked him up in fantasy as well. That kind of supplemented the loss of Chad Kelly, because Nick Arbuckle came out balling this year, and had he not gotten injured late in the season, and then that got into the Jarrett Daggy train of a couple of starts kind of flatline the end of the season, Arbuckle could have been in conversation for East MOP. It would be tough to beat out Bo Levi Mitchell, but he was looking like one of the top passers in the CFL this season. For all the woes this team had, to me, none of them were Nick Arbuckle's fault, because he had a heck of a year.
No, 100%. I was going to make a joke. Do you think that making that trade cost me the 0.8 points? But honestly, Arbuckle might have made up some of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, it came down to Toronto in that final game going for 2, and it was a whole different thing. But it's I still have nightmares over that. Anyway, I don't remember many fantasy things, but that's going to forever be in my head that I lost out because of a pass interference challenge, and they didn't kick the point after. But no, Arbuckle, again, like I don't think I was quite as high on him after the Grey Cup win as I was Kelly after his Grey Cup win. But it was a thought, and I was like, well, Toronto had this same tendency where they put a guy in the Grey Cup, and next thing you know, he's their full-blown starter, and if Kelly didn't get hurt and Kelly didn't sit another suspension, like where would he be right now too, right? Yeah. But Arbuckle had the same thing, and I think that, is he a guy that could go to Ottawa if Toronto doesn't want to keep 2 guys? Or is he a guy that might go see somewhere else now? Does he want to play competition with Chad Kelly? Again, I don't know contracts off the top of my head. But yeah, I think this, not only is this the number 7 story for 2025, I think this might be the top 5 story going into 2026 is
for sure.
Will he be the starter in Toronto with a new coach, and everything? And is Mike Miller going to be the next Dinwiddie who got called up or Corey Mace, or is he going to be the next Hogan and get the call up, and then everything goes down the tube, right? So I think that he's got a big decision there if he is going to stick with Chad Kelly or Arbuckle.
And I got to give Arbuckle his props, because after that Grey Cup game, we had seen so many years from his time in Ottawa, his time as a backup in Toronto. He got some starts early in the season last year for Toronto when Kelly was suspended. It didn't look great. This is a far cry from the potential we saw from Arbuckle when he first started out in Calgary. And then that one Grey Cup performance, to me, was a lot more of the Bombers giving away that game than it was. Arbuckle played it fantastic for sure, but I did not have faith in him coming into this season. I thought the team was going to struggle with him. at the helm, along with all the pieces they lost. And they did struggle this year, but it was absolutely not because of Nick Arbuckle. And if he would have stayed healthy all season long, not that I got a vote for most outstanding player, but I would give him an honorary nominee for East most outstanding player, because what he did was pretty impressive this year. And I hope that leads to him getting a shot to get some more playing time for whatever organization in 2026. Move on to storyline number 6 here. It's the Grey Cup champs, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and most notably Trevor Harris posting a Grey Cup record completion rate of over 85% passing in the Grey Cup this year to lead the Riders to the Grey Cup. This is also Trevor Harris's, I believe, his first Grey Cup win as a starter at 39 years of age. Adam had some other notable additions for the Riders to throw in here when he brought this up as well. Adding in Campbell, Stevens, a few more pieces, Tommy Neild along the way to take the Riders to the promised land this year. What do you want to talk about here with Trevor Harris and the Riders?
I'll be honest, Trevor Harris was so under my radar all year. And anytime being on the show, I just kind of tuned out Adam talk about Trevor Harris because I just kind of put that as his version of me talking about Collaros nonstop or whatever. And then the more the season went on, and I kind of see the standing or the stats and the fantasy points and this and that, and I'm like, maybe he's actually playing how I wish Collaros was, And so I think a lot of that comes to Trevor Harris, and again, he's not flashy, he's not flat. He's I don't want to put him completely into Matt Nichols nickel and diming, but that's more. He's the game manager. He's the Peyton Manning that finds the open guys and this and that. He's not the Patrick Mahomes dip and doodle and dancing around and doing everything. He's standing in the pot. Phillip Rivers, right? Phillip Rivers comes back at 44. And that's kind of Trevor Harris to me. He's got the great pocket presence. He knows how to find the guys, and he does what he's got to do. He's not taking off for a 20-yard run here or there. And I think that Trevor Harris, you could say that about every Grey Cup, I guess, but the Riders wouldn't be in the Grey Cup if it wasn't for how he played in the regular season, and they wouldn't have won it, obviously, of how he played. And Mace was a defensive guy, right? Yeah. So again, when you got a head coach who's a defensive guy, you got the veteran quarterback. He doesn't need the head coach to be his mentor because you got a deep that. That was the perfect combination, I think, for a Grey Cup win.
Trevor Harris has been a starter in the CFL for 10 years now, and he has put up some fantastic seasons. Like, I'm looking at his stats now. We've got, 4, 5, 6 maybe seasons over 4,000 passing yards, some solid seasons there. He's never once been in conversation, I would say, in the top tier of quarterbacks in the CFL. Early on, it was Bo Levi Mitchell, Michael Riley were your top two, and, a couple other names thrown in there. And maybe Trevor Harris was like right approaching that upper echelon. He gets that big contract out in Edmonton after being a starter and looking great with Ottawa and putting up over 5,000 yards in 2018. But then, he falters a little bit in Edmonton, up and down seasons there. He goes to Montreal, replaces Vernon Adams Jr. there after he gets traded to Montreal. And he gets, big contract from Saskatchewan, only plays 5 games in his first year there, gets injured. So he's had this reputation throughout his career of being this up and down guy, not somebody we all take necessarily seriously. But he can deliver some big games when it matters most in the playoffs at times. And he's shown that before. He's had monster playoff games in the past when he was, I want to say in Ottawa, he had a game with like 6 touchdown passes or something like that. Back in 17, 18, one of those years. I think 2017, I think Henry Burris was a starter in 18. When they won the Grey Cup, if I remember correctly. That sounds familiar. Where was I going to go with this with Trevor Harris? So yeah, same thing this season as well. Started the season great. Middle of the season really peaked. Top tier performance. One of the top scoring quarterbacks in the CFL. And then we hit Labor Day, and my narrative the whole second half of the year on this podcast was that Grandpa Harris was getting a little tired in the second half of the year. And that was my concern for this team heading into the playoffs was, his play is kind of dipping. They're not being as efficient offensively down the stretch. Are they going to be able to deliver when it matters most? So for Harris to shut up any haters out there, myself included, and go out and put up an 85% completion rate in the Grey Cup, going up against the starting quarterback that hadn't lost a game yet this year in a head-to-head duel of kind of, the aging veteran, 39-year-old Harris versus the young kid, and to go and put the performance he did, along with everything else we've talked about with the Riders here, that to me is a storyline. The major storyline of this Riders Grey Cup win is that Trevor Harris finally gets the respect he deserves, and he's coming back next season with the Riders to try to run it back now.
Oh, 100%. And, one thing I was trying to, we kind of touched on Grey Cup preview, the veteran versus like you said, the new kid. He's been there before. Even if he was a backup, he's won, he watched Ricky Ray. He played backup with Caleros. He's, had these great years and all that. And yeah, Alexander's 12-0 or whatever he was. Super fantastic. No Grey Cup rings. No, nothing else, right? You don't know what the lights are like on that Sunday night in November. Trevor Harris does. And he knows what it is. And again, 40 years old. Like, did I think Phillip Rivers is going to play at 44? No, you told me 5 or 6 years ago, Trevor Harris is going to be in the league at 40. I'd been like, who? Right? Really? Like, he's going to be doing that. And I coming back for great 40, and he looks better than a 35-year-old Caleros. You know what? Like, I'm always going to come back to Caleros. He's back in my hate of book.
Oh, really? For now,
until April. Until I see him, until I see a preseason game where he goes 5 for 5 for 20 yards, and then
you draft him in the first round of the fantasy league.
Yeah, pretty much. So, but yeah, honestly, we're looking quarterbacks. If Rourke's gone, I mean, we're looking at fantasy. Why not Trevor Harris? You know what I mean? Depending on where I'm sitting that would actually not be a terrible idea, especially as your B guy backup, on that, because he might get hurt here and there. You might have some quiet games, but 80% in the biggest game of the year, that's not going to be too bad either when it comes to fantasy. I know percentage doesn't really matter, but there's not a lot of completions.
Oh, and I hate to keep bringing it back to the fantasy angle of it, but in our draft preseason, I drafted Trevor Harris in the bonus rounds of the draft as the 9th quarterback drafted. Every other starting quarterback was drafted ahead of him this year because we didn't really have that belief in his ability to stay healthy. He basically stayed healthy all year, except he missed one game, I think, due to injury, and then maybe rested one game down the stretch. So solid year for Trevor Harris. Corey Mace built a great team, or Jeremy O'Day built a great team. Corey Mace, heck of a leader as a coach. This team was well-rounded all around and deserved their Grey Cup championship this year. So shout out to the Riders and their Grey Cup victory. We move on to our number 5 story of the year. And this one a little bit more somber tone, of course, than a Grey Cup victory. It is the tragic passing of Ticats GM Ted Gavaya midway through the season this year. He, I believe, Hamilton hometown. Am I correct in that? I want to say his hometown team.
Southern Ontario, like in that area for sure.
After being a part of the Bombers management team for many years, first year going over to be the GM in Hamilton, really puts a stamp on the team in free agency in the offseason, brought a lot of his former Winnipeg Blue Bomber members over to the team with him in the offseason, set the team up well for success to make a run in the East Division. And then, of course, we get the news of his cancer during the season. He's trying to fight through it, and the team has a for Ted night planned when they play the Winnipeg Blue Bombers that is supposed to show support for him in his fight with cancer. And that very morning, Ted Gavaya passes away from his battle with cancer, and that game itself takes on a whole new meaning when these two teams play each other. And we saw this be something that kind of the entire CFL community rallied around. We saw coaches, players, fans across the country. We, for Ted shirts, just showing their support for him, his family, the team. And yeah, it sucks to see that he put this legacy. I think he was beginning to build a legacy for a team that hasn't seen success in 20 plus years. He put a lot of pieces in place to give this team a real fighting chance to get back to the Grey Cup this year again and have a shot to win it. and that may bear fruits in years to come, but he tragically, unfortunately, will not be around to see that.
Yeah, I know from that angle it sucks, but I mean, it's always good to have the league come together. And that was kind of nice to see. But yeah, it kind of sucks to see Hamilton like that again, that not to see fulfill that legacy from that part. But every step of the way over the next 4, 5, 6 years, it's all going to be because of Ted. Ted, if anything good happens in Hamilton, right? So hate to see it, but hopefully, yeah. Like I mean, Hamilton, they got like again, we could talk about Bo.
Yeah, just throw that storyline in with this.
Yeah, because I talk about Bo. I had that was one of the storylines I had that did make it, but like we don't want to talk about old quarterbacks like Bo Levi Brady this year too with his stats, right? And I get the beginning of the year, we go back and forth. Like Bo got more respect from Harris because again, what we've seen from Bo, but like I was having a tough time believing in Bo. But then you don't want to bet against Bo and get caught, right? So, and again, some of that could be because of the receiver acquisitions like Lawler. They had Bell in the backfield. Their offense actually looked half decent at times. Again, all these things that Ted did, and it's just, right? I'm assuming he was the one that got Bo to Hamilton, or was he in Winnipeg at that
point? No, he was in Winnipeg when Bo went. Bo's been in Hamilton for a couple of years, but guys that come to mind, I mean, I'm sure there are a bunch on defense I'm blanking on. I'm thinking of those Winnipeg guys, though, like Liam Dobson on the offensive line was a great piece. Kenny Lawler is obviously the most notable that comes to mind. That almost made my list as an honorable mention, was just the sheer dominance, especially early season, of Kenny Lawler. Like you go to that game against Toronto where he put up 3 touchdowns, 180 something yards, I want to say, in that game against the Argos in week 5, week 7, something like that. You got the feeling this was going to be something special, and the Ticats were a team that finished last in the East Division the year before. And yet I'm pretty sure preseason predictions, all of us here on the podcast had them predicted to finish first in the East and probably go on to the Grey Cup out East, because of how aggressive Ted was in free agency to supplement what was already looking like one of the most explosive offenses in the CFL by bringing in some of those additional pieces that he did.
Yeah, sure.
And so, not a happy storyline to talk about, of course. Our condolences to Ted Gavaya's family, friends, teammates, team members, etc. But hopefully the team is able to build off of what he started here. They still don't have, or maybe they did recently name, I think they might have brought in Brock Sunderland to be part of their GM by committee, so to say. I think I saw that.
Assistant GM, but no GM listed. I thought FM fan had that someone had that in the Discord. I was thinking of another team.
No, I think that is right. I think Brock Sunderland was added to the mix, but I don't think they have a single GM. I believe it is a GM by committee for the Ticats, who is picking up from where Ted Gavaya left off and trying to maximize what they've got from Bo Levi Mitchell in his prime, I guess, at his current age. Who would have seen that coming? But
I just looked at the stats earlier. I think you could argue this was his second or best season statistically in the time he's been in the CFL, which is kind of weird when you think about Bo Levi.
Yeah. So, Ted Gavaya, sad to see it, but great rallying point for the CFL, and lots of good to come from this season to build on for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Let's move along to our number 4 topic on the board.
Here. Segue from something sad to now Luke Wilson. I dare you. Let's try here.
I like to think I'm decent at the segues. Normally, there's never an easy way to segue from a sad story to something else. You kind of just have to move on. So let's move on to a little bit of crazy, a little bit of bizarre, a little bit of fanfare, so to say, which was Luke Wilson taking CFL social media by storm this year. Almost every second topic discussed about the CFL online this season, I feel like either tagged Luke Wilson in it, had Luke Wilson talking about it, was about something he said, and that was a lot of attention online directed towards the CFL this season. Give us your take on Luke Wilson and this whole the summer of Wilson, so to say.
Oh man. With every fiber of my being, I get annoyed, but I think it's good. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because again, it's I don't know who to compare him to. Stephen A. kind of thing. Because again, everyone loves to hate Stephen A. Smith, or maybe a more hated Don Cherry, kind of someone who just speaks his mind. And again, people love and hate Don Cherry when he was in his prime. People love and hate Stephen A. And I think that's kind of the direction. And I can't tell if he's a what's the word for somebody who gets put into it? There's a word for it.
Industry
plant. I can't because he goes at the CFL Twitter a lot, and I just can't go back. I go back and forth if he's a CFL plant, and this was a whole PR thing where they're like, Luke, just shit on us for a summer, just be the guy, or if this was just something he said, TSN hired me, and I'm just this dude with a mullet that does some NFL picks with Jay once in a while, and now I'm getting a CFL chance. Why don't I just? I don't know, but it was after Kim K's sex tape, this might be the single greatest thing I've ever seen in social media. Luke Wilson taking the CFL by storm, because why else are the Kardashians famous other than that and OJ? And now Luke Wilson. I honestly didn't even know he was an NFL player when I saw him on a little bit here of Sports Center with the Jay before he took over. So it's again, I don't necessarily agree with every one of his takes. I don't necessarily agree with the way he argues with everybody, because it's kind of the way the world works with politics right now, too. When you see someone say something right-winged or left-wing, then there's someone who instantly argues with it. And that's kind of Luke Wilson. He kind of goes after the old guard, like Bob Irving and Michael Ball and a lot of the older guys, right? So it's kind of, you know what I mean? It's kind of I have a tough time because, again, love or hate Michael Ball or Bob Irving, but those are the guys who built the media in some of these cities or were big parts of it, especially Bob Irving in Winnipeg, right? And it's just I don't know. Again, he annoys every fiber of my being. I get good laughs out of it. I try hard not. I want to share everything he posts in our Discord, just because I want someone else to be like, "What is this dude doing with me?" That's all I want, right? But I think it's good. Am I far off?
No, I'm the same way. Like, some of the semantics of the conversations that are initiated by his online presence, I think, I don't necessarily agree with how some of these conversations take place, but him using his platform, his social following, his presence on TSN, his time in the NFL to bring attention to the CFL. Like, I have seen more chatter about the CFL this season than ever before online, and a lot of that came from some back and forths with one Luke Wilson, like I said, and I think it brought up the discussion of a lot of deeper topics that don't really get talked about online because they're not comfortable topics for some people who are steadfast in, this is the way the CFL needs to be, this is the way it's always been, let's just keep running with what we're running with. He, to his credit, challenged a lot of the belief system that a lot of the CFL fandom old guard has, and pointed out, what suggestions for improvements, talked about the rule changes. I know he just had a sit down with Stuart Johnston talking about the rule changes and stuff as well, and a good long interview with him there. And I think that I don't know if I necessarily agree with how some of the conversations began, but I think this year across CFL social media, we talked about more topics that we normally would just kind of brush under the rug. And I think they were good topics and conversations to have, and some fun debates that led out of them. So I think it's a net positive. I would say I do like what he has brought in that category, even if I don't agree necessarily with the way at times that it has been presented.
100%. I just got a great jersey idea. Numpty with the number 55, right? That's way to go next year, because I can't imagine me wanting a Bomber jersey with an actual player on it. next year. But no, again, man, like I said, when he first came on, I was not feeling it, but by week 6 or 7, I'm like, okay, I can tolerate it. You know what I mean? Again, you don't have to agree with everything he says, but the way he goes about things. But again, like he's making the conversation, and I mean, there's sometimes, again, I think he goes to a little bit of name calling, but a lot of times he does pull up facts or stats, and he kind of shows like, because again, I want to see, he's a big supporter of the rule changes, which we'll talk about later, spoiler alert, but it's, but and I still can't get over the 55, but the other ones I've maybe grown on a little bit because I see him and other TSN guys talk about it, right? And stuff. And so, that's the way to go. Because again, you need the conversation, because otherwise, again, like you said, people, I mean, remember what 3 or 4 years ago when the XFL thing, anything that wasn't the rules we have now, you seem to get canceled in CFL universe, right? So, and now it's like the commissioner, and I would say Luke Wilson's the number 1 CFL media guy this year. Like, I mean, I have a tough time. Again, Milt was gone for some time, and those panel guys aren't as outspoken anymore. Dunnigan's not there. Burness is kind of just the host, and then I'm blanking on and it was Wilson. No, Wilson wasn't there.
No, he wasn't on the panel. He was on the Friday Night Football.
Right. I'm blanking who the other panel member is now.
Davis Sanchez.
And Sanchez, I like Sanchez, but again, he's not quite that character either, right? So now I'm really putting Wilson in the face of the TSN CFL media anyway, because who else, and I think he took a approach that worked. Again, love it or hate it, it worked.
The method to my madness, right? It worked in the end. Let's move on to storyline number 3. I like talking about this one. It's Nathan Rourke in his first full season back in BC. Buck, let me add into here, Buck Pierce first season as head coach over in BC as well. And the team puts up the most productive offense statistically in CFL history in the year 2025. This was so fun to watch all season long. Just this team's putting up 30 points a game easily every night. Nathan Rourke's making magic happen. And it seemed like that was going to be the storyline. That was, to me, one of the premier storylines second half of the season. This was my number 3 storyline for my rankings as well, was who's going to stop Rourke and the Lions offense? Can anybody stop them? They're going to steamroll their way to, can they get it done in the cold against Saskatchewan? And the answer was no, they couldn't in the West final. But, there were question marks about Rourke coming into this season after he didn't look so great coming back from the NFL last year. You never know how a first-year head coach is going to work out. Buck Pierce was under some scrutiny for his offensive game plans as well. We had concerns about, did the Lions actually have enough weapons at wide receiver for Rourke to work with this year? Because there was, who saw Hatcher? He kind of looked iffy coming back from injury the year before. Well, Hatcher finished as the number 1 receiver in the CFL this year. Alexander Hollins was gone. They needed some guys to step up. And just this team moved the ball down the field with ease and finished number 1, number 2 in almost every notable offensive statistical category this year. It was just absolutely fun to watch all season long.
No, yeah, it was. Yes, during the regular season, I get all that, and I'm still going to call them overrated because I want to see something in the playoffs, and I just don't feel like we've gotten playoff Nathan Rourke to match his regular season Nathan Rourke. And I hate to say, what's the guy? I like to compare NFL, but like Josh Allen, you know what I mean? There's always the other guy that he can't beat, which this year maybe he can because Mahomes is out and Burrow is out and everything. But, that seems like Rourke's going to need to do. He's going to have to find that perfect year where Trevor Harris is done in Saskatchewan, Caleros is done in Winnipeg, VA can't win in Calgary, and just hope to God Fajardo and Ford don't do anything. That seems like to be the perfect storm of what Nathan Rourke needs to win in the playoffs. Regular season, yes, fantastic. Probably bit me in the ass to trade him in fantasy a little bit.
Wait a bit, but
at times, 0.8 points for sure would have got me that. But yeah, like I think it was exceptional. Again, I was worried that the NFL completely ruined him, going into this season and going to Buck Pierce, who I wasn't a fan of as OC in Winnipeg, but less control of what actually goes on in the offense there, and he took it and rolled with it, and I think BC's in my way, 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 way too early kind of power rankings. You kind of have to look at BC in the top 2 or 3 in the West, because I can't imagine Winnipeg and Edmonton doing much unless the free agency goes crazy, and it's going to be kind of Calgary, Saskatchewan, BC is kind of my look at the playoffs as of now. So if they put up another regular season like that, and hopefully Rourke gets it again. Why did Trevor Harris beat Rourke and Alexander? Because he's been there before. Rourke needs to get that, and then eventually those dominoes will fall. But yeah, as the regular season goes, I'll eat it. BC did a lot better than I thought.
And the big storyline of the offseason was this team moving on from Vernon Adams Jr. to give the reins to Nathan Rourke fully. They kind of did it second half of the season, then officially did so by trading VA's rights at the end of the 2024 season to Calgary and committing to Rourke for years to come. And very early season, those first couple of games, they struggled. He got injured a little bit, and Calgary was winning games, and everyone, I think there were conversations, honestly, about, well, did they make the right choice? I don't think anybody at the end of this season is questioning whether they made the right choice. Nathan Rourke won MOP. He's probably going to be, if he can stay healthy, in conversation for MOP for years and years to come, including most outstanding Canadian for sure. And this is a high-flying offense that managed to bring Keon Hatcher back for next year. I'm not sure if James Butler is a free agent yet or not still at this point in time, but I think he was a huge piece of that offensive success as well. Buck Pierce, coming into year 2 as head coach, like the sky is the limit for this offense. And I'm sure coaches are going to be spending a lot of time this offseason trying to figure out how they can possibly shut down the magic that is Nathan Rourke, because if you shut down his passing game, he was making plays happen with his legs. And yeah, not too often you see in 100-and-something year league history do you see a record broken for the best offense in CFL history in 2025, especially when you have some of those greats back in the day just tearing up opposing teams as well. It was pretty impressive.
From a season? I mean, you're not going to see 600 yards like Dunnigan or whatever he had, but I think that modern day football. What was the NFL one that I just saw? Was it Drake May was the first player to have 5 touchdowns, 80% passing, and 250 passing yards in NFL history in a game or something? And it just was like, that sounds like something that should happen all the time, right? Like, so I think modern football is more offense geared every week. So I can see I was a betting man, which we know I'm not. I could put my money on the Lions beating what they did this year next year. I would go that way if there was odds on that on Coolbet or something, or Bet365. I'd look at that just because, you can go in next year after that, shorter field, less yards per drive, but could be more scoring. You could see some. I could see BC rolling with that over the next year or two and beating it, and it's just going to look like a new norm for Nathan Rourke to put up however many yards.
I'm so excited to see what he can do in 2026 to follow that up, and what this Lions team does as well to try to get over the hump there. I mean, if they can get that home playoff game, first place in the West and host the West final, I think they've got a better shot at getting out to the Grey Cup, and then anything is possible once you make it to the Grey Cup there as well. Moving on to storyline number 2, we all had this high up on our list. It's Davis Alexander, and his perfect streak as a starter, comes into the year undefeated as a starter, continues throughout the regular season, throughout the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, undefeated as a starter. I think it was 12 or 13-0 heading into the Grey Cup. That was a huge storyline of Grey Cup week, of course, as well. And then, he does not get the Grey Cup win to cap it off, but despite playing with an injury, really gave it his all in that game. I mean, this is record. Talk about breaking records. He broke the record set by Danny McManus for best start in his CFL career, which was 8-0 at the time, and now he's set the new record at 13-0, which is a far cry from that. I don't know how many years is this record going to last, but you talk about special quarterbacks like we did with Nathan Rourke, and I think we found another one here in Davis Alexander.
No, for sure. Going into this year, there was the two screw-ups I think franchises did, and I thought maybe VA moving from BC was one, and I think Montreal moving on from Fajardo was two, and both of them turned out to benefit, right? And you know, even though Fajardo was doing pretty good in Edmonton, which we talked about earlier, Alexander in Montreal was probably just enough better that Montreal is very satisfied with their decision. And again, a guy that kind of was under my radar at times throughout the year with injury and certain other things, and you know, and you're like, you kind of forget about Montreal. You're like, who's starting this week? Is it Alexander or is it Bethel Thompson? Like, you kind of want to stay away from Montreal if it's Bethel Thompson, but if it's Alexander, and it was kind of just a nightmare with fantasy, which we're always going to come back to because we are the podcast to listen to fantasy. So come, you know, don't forget to come back in June. But, you know, I think Montreal again has a young guy, and they remember to 2-3 years ago when they didn't have ownership on free agency. Yeah. They didn't have owner, and then they end up winning the Grey Cup that year, and then they've, you know, he kept going with that, right? So, yeah. So, you know, as in the chat says, his record is 11-0 if you don't want to count and 2 postseasons. So he could still be going. The regular season record of consecutive wins could still be going come this season, and to see what he can do in Montreal. And, you know, easier schedule in the East. Like, you still have to play the West twice, but you play those East teams 3-4 times each. Damn, man, he could. Montreal, again, way too early predictions. I don't have a lot of hope in Toronto. Hamilton should be decent. Ottawa could be good, but again, that's, you know, that's not a big, you know, I could see the probability going either way. Montreal should be the front runner for the East. Again, if we're looking at a way too early predictions, and why not with Alexander throwing to Tyson Philpott?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, Tim in the chat, saying 11-0 regular season record. So he's officially 11-0 starting the year. Depends who you ask, right? The CFL seemed to, based on some of their graphics around Zach Collaros, Brady Oliveira, et cetera, in the playoffs, decided to not count the Grey Cup as a playoff game by saying they were like 7-0 in the playoffs over the last couple of years. So, you know, technically in the regular season and playoffs, Davis Alexander is 13-0 if you ask the CFL, and the Grey Cup loss doesn't count towards that in some weird way. Alexander was so much fun to watch this year. He really was the storyline. I love the swagger. I love the trash talk that he brings. And It was the tale of 2 seasons as well, where anytime, you know, when Davis Alexander was injured, Montreal was a mess. And it was a rotation of quarterbacks between MBT, Caleb Evans, Shea Patterson, James Morgan, I think was the other one. James Morgan. Yeah. I think it was James Morgan. Okay. Yeah, James Morgan. See, there's so many quarterbacks, it's hard to remember the exact names of all of them there that Montreal went through the season. And it was just night and day difference when Alexander was in there. The defense was better. The whole team was better when he was out there. And this is another young quarterback. Mm-hmm. Like, I think we're going to have probably Nathan Rourke and Davis Alexander in our top 10 CFL storylines for years to come. And this is going to be the new head-to-head duo as we move on from the older guard of Bo Levi Mitchell once he moves along into retirement, Trevor Harris, Zach Collaros, etc. This is the next line of superstars in the CFL, and Davis Alexander is exactly a superstar, and he's got that superstar mentality about him. And I'm excited to see what he does, and I'm excited to see how he bounces back from that Grey Cup appearance, because he let it all out on the field in that one, and I want to see what he can do coming into the year again with that 11-0 regular season record, how far into 2026 he could carry that.
I swear to God, if you end up with Rourke and Alexander on your fantasy team, man, somehow I'm quitting. But
I traded Alexander early in the year to Mike because he because of the injury situation, and I had other quarterbacks in play, but we'll see what happens there. But no, Adam's keeping Nathan Rourke next year,
Yeah.
so
that's remember the roster and who's our keepers and stuff. So
yeah. All right. Story number 1. Drum roll, please. This should be a surprise to nobody.
Yeah.
It is Commissioner Stuart Johnston announcing rule changes for the CFL coming into play in 2026, 2027. What a day that was. What a weekend of media storm that was, with them teasing up that they were about to announce significant changes to the game, all of the rumor mills leading up to it, the announcement itself, the fan response to it, everything. What angle do you want to go in discussing this? Where do you want to begin?
Again, I'm going to clump this very similar. And this media storm was another one of those things where I thought maybe Luke Wilson's a plant, because the CFL, love or hate the rule changes, did exactly the same thing as what Luke Wilson has been doing. Who cares what the fan base is? They made their decision. They made a media storm about it. It was the most talked about thing on, well, see, I never know how to look at Twitter or Facebook or whatever, because you're in your own bubble. But honestly, CFL in a normal week doesn't show up a lot on my timeline, even for someone who watches and has a lot of things on CFL. Mine's more covered by UFC, horse racing, NFL, even in June, July, baseball with the Jays. Like, the CFL doesn't pop up all the time. But it did that week, right? It did that when the rumor mill started. And, again, probably planned leaks to tell certain people what to say and not say to get the storm going. And again, all I got was the trauma from the XFL merger where, oh my God, it's going to be 4 downs. Oh my God, it's going to be, is it going to be, is the ratio going to be in like that hellstorm, and what's the Rock going to be the commissioner and all that stuff, to this where people hated it. But I think the reception was a lot more positive in some aspects than what the XFL merger talks would have been. And I think, again, a part of that is having the TSN guys kind of on board with it. Johnson, had the little explanation video saying why we're doing certain things. Again, love or hate it. And you're a stats guy. When, love or hate it, once you throw the stats, you kind of go, okay, checkmate, you got me. I don't have an argument other than an emotional one for most of the rule changes, right? Like, really, other than maybe the one stat I don't agree with is kickoffs is going to be better because of the end zone or something. But again, it's I think it's going to be so insignificant at the end of the day that I think the only rule change that you're really going to notice is the 55, and maybe that the end zones the uprights are outside the end zones. And okay, that's cool. Like, everything else is still Canadian, right? So I can't remember. What was your thoughts on the rules initially, and how do you feel now?
I was on board initially, and I'm on board now. And I think Stuart Johnston, and an honorable mention for one of our top 10 storylines that you both threw in was Stuart Johnston's first year as CFL commissioner. I thought he hit it out of the park with the way he did this. I think the media, rumors and stuff leading up to it and the way they teased the announcement could have gone better. It's that classic, like, the boss, so to say, invites you to a meeting, an ominous meeting coming up, but doesn't tell you the agenda of what the meeting's going to be. Then it turns out to be something good, but you've been worrying the entire time about what it could potentially be. I thought the way they did the announcement, with him coming out with explaining the reasons for why they're doing what they're doing, showing the little graphic video for visual learners like myself, of here's exactly how this is going to change, what it's going to impact, stuff like that. I thought he did really good there. What I thought he did not do very good, though, in that one was quiet the storm that came after it, which he later made up for at Grey Cup week during a press conference or two there, where he came out and firmly said at that point, I made the mistake of not being more clear that we're maintaining these key aspects of the Canadian game, which was the 3 downs, the number of players, the ratio, like things like that, right? The waggle, I think he threw into that list as well. There was such an emotional reaction. I like what you said there about the emotional reaction, positive or negative. I saw a lot more negative than positive. Like, scrolling Twitter, scrolling through Reddit, like, just constant responses about canceling season tickets. Let's organize protests at the Grey Cup. Like, cool. Yes, I understand you're attached to the CFL you have fallen in love with, but over 100 and something year history, you eventually need to make some changes. And I don't think any of the changes they made changed my enjoyment of the CFL game. Like, my thought was, I was surprised by the outrage of the 55-yard line, because the 55-yard line was the opposite of the Roman Empire to me. It's not something I've ever thought about on a day-to-day basis. I hardly even notice it out there on the field. I don't think, besides the initial, oh yeah, that looks shorter, it's really going to impact my viewing experience. And I think there were some positive changes. Do the stats they outline saying this is going to improve touchdowns by X percentage, is that actually going to come to fruition? The stats guy in me can't wait to see the numbers coming out of this year to prove whether or not that's actually the case. But I like the rule changes. I thought there were some positives within there. I'm happy they kept the things that were staples of what I wanted to see, such as the 3 downs. And I'm excited for what Stuart Johnson's going to do going forward here. End of season press conference, he talked about, introducing season-long fantasy. He talked about introducing a new website for the CFL, a mobile app that's been missing for years. Those are the things that are near and dear to my heart as a software developer, media, social media, online content guy, that I'm excited to see that the league was severely lacking. So I'm excited for what Johnston can do, and I think he made a stamp in year one in a very notable way with announcing these rule changes, and there's a lot of doom and gloom around it. But I think that, to me, that doom and gloom was not justified.
No, again, it's gonna be weird to see. Like, I'll admit, like, the 55 is, like, I know, something more to me. But it was funny. My boys got bomber blankets for Christmas, and guess what? It has the 50, a line and a 50, and I made a joke. That's outdated as of 2027. Like, that might be a rare item that you get to sell one day. To somebody be like, wait, why does that old blanket have a 55-yard line on it? You had to explain that to the grandkids or something, where back in my day, we had a bigger field, But other than that, and again, the uprights, it's going to be weird. But you know what? I've been thinking about this with other sports, like the kickoff of the NFL, I thought was the weirdest thing. I bought the new Madden, and I'm used to it now. You know what I mean? It's the weirdest thing to look at, with these guys way down the field and the kicker by himself. And even on Madden now, they got this big green circle where you're supposed to kick it, and it just looked weird. But you're watching it on Sunday, it's not that weird. People thought the 3-point line was going to be stupid. People thought forward passing was going to be stupid when they got rid of the 2-line or no 2-line pass in hockey. All these rules are going to be are going to change things, and you don't know if it's for good or bad. You can make the argument the 3-point shot has ruined basketball because there's no more actual basketball. It's just guys who shoot it from way down the court. Maybe these rules might, sure, it might increase scoring, might ruin the game, might decrease scoring, but might make things more fun in a way. Like, I just, I think you got to wait and see. And maybe the field change would be the hardest, but the worst thing the league can do is throw the Uno reverse card in 5 years and say, hey, we tried it, didn't work, let's bring the 55 back, or let's change the Rouge back, or these ones work, these ones didn't, so let's tweak it again. And I think that's all you can ask for, because you want it to evolve. Because again, we want to talk about 100, you talk about 110 years, what, 30 or 40 or 50 of that was rugby, the Grey Cup, or more rugby style. Like, so back when you can only pass it backwards, and I try to watch rugby and I still don't understand. So, I think the rules are fine. I like the changes you were talking about. Let's try to get some kind of video game going, better than that phone one they had a few years ago. And I thought I was a little underwhelmed with him starting, and then he said again, yippee-ki-yay, mother truckers, here I am. I'm changing the rules. I'm canceling this event at the Grey Cup. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Hey, and now it's, in recent history, he's done more than a lot of other commissioners in 1 year, right? You might be muted. You pulled an Adam.
Of course, had to end off the year and be one of the first times I've done that. It's not the first though. I've done that a few times. Um, but that was like basically the first thing that we saw him do was announce the rule changes this year. Like he got the job, he did his initial press conference, then he kind of went radio silence and was like, "What's the new commish up to?" Well, surprise, he's up to these radical things. That rubbed a lot of people the wrong way because it's new guy comes in and wants to change everything. Like, yeah, I get that, how that can rub people the wrong way. I think most of the negative reaction to me came from not the set of rules that are actually changing now. It's, oh, this is the Americanization of the game. This is step one. Now they'll change everything else next year. And the CFL is now the NFL's farm league. And there goes the CFL as I know it. The message I conveyed when these came out, when we did our first initial reaction podcast, the message I convey now is that, well, Stuart Johnston has come out and said that like they are firmly committed to keeping all of these key aspects of the game that keep it different. And B, like, I'm not going to go and say I hate the current adjustments because they're going to lead to potential future things when we don't even know yet if they're going to lead to potential future things. Like, come back to me in 5 years, and if they have changed everything, I'll go back and say, and I'll admit, like, yeah, maybe that was the beginning of the air quotes end, so to say, but why can't I enjoy positive rule improvements that I think are actually positive improvements without the doom and gloom to come if we don't know the doom and gloom is going to come?
100%. 100%. And I said it back when, again, the XFL merger thing, I would rather have 4-down football, 100 yards, no waggle, all that stuff, and have the Blue Bombers. Have a team that I can see the stadium, I can take my kids to. Sure, it's going to be weird. Sure, it might not be the game I love, but at the end of the day, I would rather have something of resemblance than nothing, right? Just an empty stadium that we spent $300 million on, and what's it going to, great, it's going to host Bison football. You know what I mean? Great. I'd rather that than this. And sure, like you said, we don't know what the rules changes are. And heck, if it does turn into something more Americanization, great. At least we have our own pro league that we have that, we don't have a Canadian baseball. Well, we do, but like, you know what I mean? We have it's the first of it. Now we have a soccer league. Now we have a basketball league. Now we have these things coming up, probably only because of the CFL. If the CFL wasn't here, I don't any of these other leagues would have even been here. Like, yeah. So because the CFL is the only one. Soccer leagues have come and gone. Basketball leagues have come and gone. You see Valor gone now. Like things have come and gone. CFL has been here in some capacity. I don't think, when they're talking about, the end zone used to be 25 yards. How many people said they're never going to buy season tickets again because it went from 25 to 20 or whatever it was, right? Okay, God, now it's going to 15. It actually will fit in every goddamn stadium. Great. I hate the trapezoid. I know you. I hate it because the guy's going to make a catch, and it would have been a catch in every other stadium and not Montreal. Yeah. And now it's going to look better. And, the benches on opposite sides, which should have already been a thing.
The play clock being better.
I don't mind the play clock. I actually like the consistency because I kind of, because once in a while I don't want to, we're already at the hour and a half mark, but once in a while there'll be a quick whistle by the ref and they're rushing to get the playoff. But then the next 5 plays or the next time the other team has the ball, it's so lax. And it could just be human error. It might not be anything sinister, but human error, and that costs the team 5 yards. And it could be the drive to win the game because, again, that ref is feeling antsy and says, you know what, I want to go home after this. And, Peru's like, let's go. And the team's still in the huddle. But when was it 30 seconds now? 35? 30?
35, I think.
35? 35. Great. 35 seconds. I bet that 15, and then it's consistent. Right when the play ends, just like the NFL, right when the previous play ends, the clock starts, right? You got your time. It's more consistent. I like that.
Yeah, from now on, I'll be able to actually, when I tell my family, hey, there's 2 minutes left in the game or so, I'll be able to actually tell an accurate amount of time that's left in the game and not, there's 2 minutes left of football time, so this might be 15 to 30 minutes depending on the flavor of the day.
Honestly, I don't think sure, I get where you're going. I still don't think it will change it that much because, like, the play like, sure, if the clock, I don't think it'll change it that much at the end of it. Like maybe a few seconds here or there. Even if the clock starts, you're in hurry up offense. You're getting down there, and I think I don't think, yeah.
Yeah,
You really
I don't
think
think
it's
it's
going to be
gonna.
the last
No,
3
I
minutes
don't think.
that much quicker?
No, I don't think it's going to make it that much quicker. It's just going to make it consistent, like you said,
Yeah,
to remove that variable aspect of it.
yeah.
And I'd love to
Yeah,
see
I think
for some
the only two rule changes that kind of hurt me anyway is something that kind of changes what the difference was between the two leagues. So
right.
if you, again, sure, and some don't matter. We've had these talk about what makes the Canadian game Canadian. We talked about rouge, the waggle, 55, the ball size, the uprights, the field length. We could nick and pick all that. There's probably like 10 differences or major differences. And as long as we still have 8 of them now, okay, that's fine. Like it's still 8 differences that the league doesn't have. And again, we could change everything to be the American field and just keep 3 downs. Okay, that's one difference we have. That's different. And like the rouge change, right? The rouge change is, I think, needed because we don't need. Or do you think the walk-off rouge is kind of fun? I go back and forth on it.
That I have turned more into somebody that is less specifically a fan of my local team in the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and more of just like, I watch the CFL for entertainment. I don't care if my team loses at the hand of an entertaining, funny finish. I love chaos, controlled chaos. I believe the more controlled chaos we put in the world helps counterbalance the uncontrolled chaos. So I love the chaotic ending of a walk-off rouge.
Yeah. And then, like, because you think, like, a game would be he kicks it through, you win, but you hit that upright, it's a dead ball, and it's a tie game, right? Like,
Could you imagine if you lost the game because you hit the upright instead of missing it live?
Fair, but now does this create this one where if the ball goes through, it's nothing, so our kicker is going to be more inclined to try to kick it light so it lands in play, and you hope your coverage team keeps them in the end zone, which is now a shorter end zone. Or do you try to do the punt and roll it in?
I think we're just going to have to see all these rule changes in action, right? Yeah. To see how it all plays into each other and how much is it going to make a difference. Again, it's a phased approach. Some come in 2026, some come in 2027. I'm sure we'll talk about the impacts of these in our season preview shows. I'm sure we'll talk about it in our season wrap-up shows, our end-of-year countdown next year again as well. The announcement of it for sure, though, absolutely the number one storyline in the CFL this year, because that broke CFL social media for sure, was the day that was announced. Everybody was tuned in to what was about to be said, and that was the biggest day of the CFL season this year for sure. That's our top 10 CFL news stories of 2025. We had a couple of honorable mentions that got some decent votes amongst our panel as well. We kind of looped those all into everything. Stuart Johnson being the new commissioner, we talked about that. Bo Levi Mitchell's best statistical season, you put that one in. We talked about that. The Argos downfall, we talked about that. So I think we've covered everything here.
Can I have one quick one?
Sure.
And this is not specific to this year, but it's been something new. Schedule coming out in December. I think it's been amazing, and I think it's been well received. It's only been a year or two. It hasn't been a long time that it's come out the same year. I thought it came out like early the next year.
Yeah, the last couple of years it has, but it used to be much later for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, keep that going. Nice schedule in December. It honestly, it makes people be able to get season tickets for Christmas or holidays and stuff like that, because now your games, you can figure out some stuff. It gives some dead air too, because if the schedule doesn't come out till January, February, well, that's free agency, and you're already talking about free agency. So now, what the hell are you talking about in the CFL for December? Well, the schedule comes out, and that's not what we're talking about. Now, a lot of teams are doing their plays of the year and stuff like their countdowns, and then January, February, free agency, March draft, April training camp, and then you're finding the be able to talk about CFL football 12 months a year with giving it
amazing.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, looking forward to another calendar year of talking about all the crazy stories from around the CFL. Of course, this ends our 2025 content. We appreciate everybody who's joined us throughout the whole 2025 year. It was an interesting year for the podcast, me taking a step back for a bunch of the summer, Trey and Adam stepping up and leading the show for like 9-10 weeks while I was gone throughout the summer as well. We produced a lot of good content. We crossed our 300th episode this year. Now we're well on our way with this one being 319. I guess we got to start planning episode 350 probably at some point next year. We'll hit that. And the off season rolls on. And to me, at times, besides like the beginning of the year, the off season is my favorite time to record this podcast because we get to dive deep into topics like the ones we talked about here tonight. And what's to come on the podcast. Again, hoping to resume the team-by-team deep dive series in this coming week, start scheduling some of those again. So stay tuned for notice about those. Also hoping to start to see if I can fit in a little bit of just free agency preview content over the next month as we get closer to free agency. We should probably get the crew here back together to talk about all the off-season content. We were originally going to talk about that today, and then Adam pitched, well, let's talk about, let's end off the year with, our Aaron quotes New Year's Eve, day before New Year's Eve countdown of the top stories of the year. So we haven't even really touched on all of the news that's come out around the CFL so far. So I think it's shaping up to be a busy January here on the Canadian Football Countdown, busy entering free agency period this year as well. So keep it locked, keep it loaded, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe on your favorite podcast feeds. Follow us on social media at CF Countdown Pod on X or Blue Sky or Facebook to get notified of when our next shows are coming out. Usually post the day or two before to give a heads up about that. Check out our friends at the Canadian Football Podcast Network at CF Pod Network on X, Alternative Football Network friends at the official AFN on X or alternativefootballnetwork.com. Trey, what about you? What y'all got going on these days? Where can people find it?
You can find me on the X at Trey MB Harness. Kind of quiet time for horse racing right now, so don't look a lot of that on. UFC's on break, so it's just I don't really been posting much. But yeah, if you want to talk anything there, Trey MB Harness. I got my third annual Westy Awards, which I host for Western Canadian Harness Racing. That comes up in a few weeks. New Year's Eve card in Edmonton tomorrow, as long as it doesn't cancel, which is always fun because their races go past midnight, at least in Eastern time zone, and might be touching it in Central. So if you want to take in the new year with some horse racing, that's always fun. Yeah, and then UFC end of January, moving to Paramount, so I don't have to watch it on Stream East anymore. And there we go. That's going to be my with NFL football. And I guess I actually congratulate Mike again. Once again. God, I hate that. Anyway, and yeah. Ryan, what about you, man? What's going on?
You can find me on X and Blue Sky at Cooper Trooper 42. Don't really post much on there, though. I am kind of absent on social media. But I've, even on our podcast socials right now, it's basically, here's the next show, here's the current episode, things like that. Not too active on the socials. Maybe that would help us grow a little bit more if I did that. But you can find me usually giving my thoughts on things in the CFC Discord community is the best place to find me there. You can find the link in the episode description. It's free to join us. Adam's been doing a really good job this offseason of just posting news item after news item from around the CFL in there. And I usually have some thoughts on those. So take a look to the Discord if you want to hear from me in between episodes. I said it already. We appreciate all the support this season once again. And we're going to be back with lots more content to come in 2026. Looking forward to 2026 here for the podcast as well. As Trey kind of threw it out there earlier that for fantasy, we're the go-to podcast for fantasy. The 2026 season is where the CFL is unveiling official season-long fantasy. So I'm hoping we can kick things up a notch a little bit and continue to be the go-to show for that. So I hope you stick with us throughout the off season because we have lots to come there. hope you ride with us into the regular season in 2026. And we appreciate all the support for our wonderful little show here. Leave us a like, leave us a comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends, share with your non-friends. Help us grow the show. We always appreciate that. Share it with the random people at your New Year's Eve party. Of course, party. Have a good time on New Year's Eve. Have a safe celebration. And it's been a good year here on the Canadian Football Countdown. We will see you in 2026. Happy New Year's, everybody. On behalf of Trey, Adam, Mike, I'm Ryan saying thank you for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.